From the New Mexico desert all the way to the depths of Upper Michigan, Aperture Science and Black Mesa both explored various fields of experimental science in an attempt to further humanity's understanding of the universe, but most importantly, to be the first to do it. Outside of their rivalry, there were whispers of clandestine and unethical experiments performed, rumors of teleportation mishaps, missing test subjects, and worries of a resonance cascade. Across history, there have been many hoaxes and conspiracy theories around subjects of this matter. One of them was highly influential, even if it ruined several lives along the way. The Philadelphia experiment is one of the most mysterious yet impactful conspiracy theories in history. What actually happened? How did it influence the CEO of Aperture Science, Cave Johnson? And what did it mean for the future of humanity? In this video, we explore the case for the Borealis. Between the 1970s to the 2000s, deep beneath Upper Michigan, the Aperture Science facility reportedly conducted a series of classified tests on a Healy-class icebreaker. But during one of these experiments, the research vessel simply vanished without a trace. As word of the disaster quietly spread through scientific circles, even reaching their rival, Black Mesa, Aperture refused to confirm or deny what had happened, if it had happened at all. Among those who have heard whispers of it, the Borealis became legend, a ship that had vanished with not only its crew, but also a part of the dry dock. What happened that day? If it happened at all? To those who heard this tale, it sounded eerily familiar. To understand why, we need to go back to 1955. That year, ufologist Morris K. Jessup published his first book, The Case for the UFO. The book offered a fascinating glimpse into Jessup's exploration of UFOs, ancient civilizations, and unexplored phenomena. Though it only saw modest success in traditional publishing, it became highly influential in UFO circles. It also, unfortunately, garnered the attention of one person in particular, Carl Meredith Allen. Allen was obsessed with alien life and teleportation technology, so he meticulously combed through Jessup's book, eager to share his thoughts on the author's theories. At the same time, Aperture Science was thriving. They had been awarded runner-up for the US Department of Defense's Contract of the Year award. Their products were innovative and held to the highest standards thanks to their rigorous testing procedures. Their repulsion gel and sentry turrets were groundbreaking. Meanwhile, they worked in secret on a quantum tunneling device, a portal gun. With more testing ahead, CEO Cave Johnson ordered the salt mines to be expanded further to accommodate their growing projects. Having had enough time to read through Morris K. Jessup's book, Carl Meredith Allen sent him a letter with his thoughts and a story of his own. This letter was received on January 13th, 1956, postmarked from Gainesville, Texas. He claimed to have witnessed a Navy ship rendered invisible in October of 1943. According to Allen, this had been made possible by an experimental force field, supposedly based on a version of Einstein's unified field theory. But the experiment went terribly wrong, and the men on board suffered greatly. Some were frozen, others suffered psychological damage, a few became invisible, some caught fire, and a number of men, he stated, were embedded in the ship itself. Allen said he had witnessed it all from a nearby ship. They took this ship, a destroyer type, and all of its crew while at sea, October 1943. The field was effective in an oblate spheroidal shape, extending 100 yards, more or less due to lunar positions and latitude, out from each beam of that ship. Any person within that sphere became vague in form, but he too observed those persons aboard that ship as though they too were of the same state, yet were walking upon nothing. Any person without that sphere could see nothing save the clearly defined shape of the ship's hull in the water. At the bottom of the letter, he also included his seaman certificate of identification, serial number Z416175. This number identified Allen himself, and he claimed it proved he had been serving aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth at the time, which lent his story a hint of credibility, at least on the surface. Allen described the experiment as a technical success, but a complete human disaster. Jessup read these extraordinary claims, and just a few days later, received another letter offering further details and clarification of what had apparently happened. This letter built upon the original claim, but the most astonishing claim was that the ship itself had teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk. He wrote, "The experimental ship disappeared from its Philadelphia dock, and only a very few minutes later appeared at its other dock in Norfolk, Newport News, Portsmouth area. Then again disappeared and went back to Philadelphia dock in only a very few minutes or less." The idea of a ship disappearing from the Philadelphia dock to evade enemy radar was one thing, but a vessel that had teleported nearly 270 miles was something else entirely, and it had come at the cost of the crew on board. Seeking further clarification, Jessup wrote back, asking Allen for any information that might corroborate the story. In approximately April of 1956, Carl Allen sent a manila envelope addressed to Admiral N. Firth of the Office of Naval Research. Unlike his earlier letters to Jessup, which came from other towns, this one was sent from Seminole, Texas, and under a different name, Carlos Miguel Allende, or Allende. These were the two main ways I could find of saying his surname. It is worth noting that some of his earlier letters to Jessup had also been signed with this alias. The envelope, marked Happy Easter, was opened to reveal a copy of Morris K. Jessup's book, but this one was different. It was annotated by what appeared to be 3 different people, each offering their own opinions of his work. Each person was identified by a different shade of blue ink. These were later labeled as Mr. A, Mr. B, and Jemmy. Throughout the book, they debated, agreed, disagreed, and expanded on Jessup's theories. In reality, it is believed that Allen wrote all of these notes himself. Anyway, as they reviewed the annotated copy, it found its way across the office, and 2 officers at the ONR took a particular interest: Commander George W. Hoover and Captain Sidney Sherby. On May the 25th, 1956, Morris received another letter from Carl Allen, this time postmarked from Du Bois, Pennsylvania. In this one, Allen stated that he would never be able to satisfy Jessup's curiosity with information, and the only way he would be able to prove his claims was if he had access to the devices that generated forces and fields, something he would never be able to access as he was not permitted to enter the Navy Research Department. He also claimed that the Navy had abandoned this white elephant because it was too dangerous. Having dealt with Carl Allen, or Carlos Allende, whatever name he had decided to use in the subsequent letters after this, Jessup eventually distanced himself and refocused on his work. In that year, he published 2 more books, UFOs in the Bible and the UFO Annual. Unfortunately, his connection to Carl Allen would only get stronger. In 1957, Jessup was invited to the Office of Naval Research and shown the annotated copy of his book, The Case for the UFO. It was here that he recognized the handwriting in the margins. It belonged to Carl Allen, also known as Carlos Allende. He then told them about the letters and then produced them as proof. Now, this is where this story garnered even more attention. Those ONR officers, Hoover and Sherby, well, they were deeply involved in satellite development and had encountered UFO researchers who believed they were also involved in gravity research. The officers suspected the book might be the source of that belief. The military also took interest in the notes, which hinted at classified US research. It was also during this period that the Varo manufacturing company worked with the military. At Sherby's request, the Military Assistance Division at Varo produced a limited number of annotated copies. This unique version of the book, now known as the Varo edition, included Allen's original letters and the annotated copy as a single document. Jessup even gave his permission for his work to be used in this way, and between 12 and 25 copies were produced. Following this, he published a follow-up to his first book, but it failed to generate the interest he had hoped for. He was later dropped by his publisher, and unfortunately, in April of 1959, 2 years later, he took his own life. As the 1960s arrived, Aperture Science's once bright success had faded. The government had noticed that many of the astronauts, Olympians, and war heroes the company had brought in to test their products had never returned. To investigate this, they subjected Cave Johnson and the company to a Senate hearing. Alongside this, their products failed to sell, and as the 60s reached its end, Aperture was forced to declare bankruptcy. Although the Varo edition was intended for internal use by the Office of Naval Research and a select few outside of the military, over this next decade, into the 70s, duplicated copies found their ways into the hands of UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists, and the whispers of a secret government experiment gone wrong got so much louder. As the 1970s began, rumours of a ship that had vanished and reappeared hadn't quite yet reached the mainstream, but they still echoed in the right circles. Interestingly enough, in 1971, a dry dock was constructed in Test Shaft 09 beneath Aperture Science, a dock designed to hold a ship underground. Now, the timing of this raises questions. Cave Johnson was determined to push boundaries during this period. He was desperate for funding, and if we have to speculate, it is plausible that he or someone on his team obtained a copy of the Varo edition. What if he could make this conspiracy theory real? Aperture was also in the process of testing their portal gun, and knew that their rivals over at Black Mesa had begun to explore this field too. Cave was determined to win the portal race and beat Black Mesa for funding. In doing so, Aperture abandoned standard safety practices, showing no concern for the ethical consequences. Over the years, a Healy-class icebreaker, the Borealis, was outfitted with advanced technology, staffed with a crew, and quietly tested. This work, of course, was top secret, but Black Mesa did hear about it. Even now, we did not know exactly what they were testing, but we would eventually discover the results. One day, the Borealis simply vanished with all hands and even a part of the dry dock. In 1979, the Philadelphia experiment, Project Invisibility, was published by authors Charles Berlitz and William L. Moore. Their work not only solidified the name for this conspiracy theory, but their thorough research into the Varo edition and additional Allen letters, they identified the vessel involved in the experiment, the USS Eldridge. In this book, they spoke of a ship that had vanished in a green fog as it teleported to Norfolk, Virginia, and back. This essentially made the Philadelphia experiment mainstream, and as each person heard about it and retold the tale in their own way, additional aspects were added. One in particular was that the ship and the crew moved not only through space, but also time. This was explored in the 1984 movie adaptation, The Philadelphia Experiment, with reports of a tragic, secret government experiment gone wrong. As each adaptation of this story built upon the legend, the Office of Naval Research released a statement in September of 1996 to address the claims. It was a long statement, but the end sums it up pretty well. ONR has never conducted any investigation on invisibility, either in 1943 or at any other time. ONR was established in 1946. In view of present scientific knowledge, ONR scientists do not believe that such an experiment could be possible except in the realm of science fiction. Despite this statement, this conspiracy theory did not go away. Roughly 20 years after the Combine's invasion and oppression of humanity, sometime in the 2020s, the Resistance cut off the Combine's connection to Earth. For her role in this fight, Judith Mossman and a small team had travelled to the Arctic North on an expedition. It was here that they discovered something incredible: the Aperture vessel that had disappeared decades earlier, the Borealis. Many have believed this to be a myth, but it was real. Not only did Judith locate the ship, but she also recovered blueprints and documentation detailing its contents. As an Aperture vessel, it contained material emancipation grills, advanced particle fields, and unstationary scaffolds. It was also fitted with teleportation technology that had pulled the ship from its dry dock beneath Aperture in Upper Michigan into the frozen Arctic wilderness. There was, however, no trace of the crew. Although Judith was captured by Combine forces in that region, she did attempt to send a data packet of what she had found and the blueprints. Meanwhile, in White Forest, when Resistance leaders Eli Vance and Isaac Kleiner viewed her findings, they had very different opinions on what they should do with this information. Kleiner saw the vessel and whatever might be on board as a weapon they could use to continue their fight against the Combine, whereas Eli argued it should be destroyed. He truly believed that there was no controlling the kind of power that it contained. The Black Mesa incident had happened because he had not stopped the experiment, but he could stop this from being used. Alongside this, Eli was also given a message from an old acquaintance: prepare for unforeseen consequences. This is where the story of the Borealis comes to a canonical end. The Resistance raced to reach the Borealis before the Combine did, but until we receive a Half-Life 3 or Episode 3, we will never know what they chose to do with it, or what the unforeseen consequence of using the Borealis could have been. There was, however, Epistle 3, written by Mark Laidlaw. This is not canon, but it extended the lore on the Borealis and what actually happened the day it disappeared. When the Borealis was discovered by Gordon Freeman and Alex Vance in the Arctic wasteland, they watched how it faded in and out of reality. When they got on board with Judith after they rescued her, they saw firsthand what had happened to it. In their aim to beat Black Mesa for government funding, Aperture Science created what they called a bootstrap device, a self-contained machine that emitted a large field around the ship, in a manner not unlike what Carl Allen had claimed to have witnessed in Philadelphia. When activated, the untested bootstrap device was designed to teleport the ship anywhere. And on that day, in a desperate attempt to keep the Borealis out of Combine hands, the operator sent the Borealis to the furthest place they could think of, Arctica. Unknown to them and everyone on board, the device travelled not only through space, but also time. At the moment of activation, the Borealis and her crew were stretched across space and time between the nearly forgotten Lake Huron of the 7-Hour War and the present-day Arctic. It was pulled taut like an elastic band, vibrating as it shifted through time and space as if it existed at every point, all at once. Freeman saw the dry docks of Aperture Science at the moment of teleportation, the invasion of the Combine, the Arctic wasteland, and other worlds far beyond our own. He existed everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But even still, the crew was gone. At the story's climax, the Borealis was set to hit the Combine overworld at full speed as a time-traveling missile. To the Combine, however, its impact registered as little more than the flicker of a match. Morris K. Jessup and his book, The Case for the UFO, unintentionally became the cornerstone of a major conspiracy as a result of Carl Meredith Allen's claims of what he had seen. This interaction rippled across different forms of media, time, and into one of the most beloved franchises in gaming, Portal. On the 22nd of August 1986, an article was written about Mr. Allen in the News of Colorado Centennial County. He confessed that the Philadelphia experiment was a hoax, but after this, he retracted his confession, then confessed again, and then retracted it. Eventually, one time when he confessed, he stuck with it until his death in 1994. As for the Borealis and Cave Johnson, the timeline made sense. In the period that the Varo edition began to make its way into the hands of those outside of the government, he had the dry dock constructed to do what I believe was his own version of the Philadelphia experiment. I would love to know if there were conspiracy theorists who heard about his disaster and wrote about it to a poor author whose work was overshadowed by unverifiable claims. The Borealis, just like many other parts of Valve games, is shrouded in mystery, and hopefully with this insight, we can at least understand the inspiration behind it, and from Epistle 3, what it could mean for the future of the series. Before I made the Borealis video years ago, I had never heard of the Philadelphia experiment. It may just be a cultural thing. I asked a bunch of my American friends and they had all heard of it. My British friends had not. It was such an interesting conspiracy theory to explore. The letters, the case for the UFO, Varo edition, and even the movie was cool. I did my best to keep this to the story, so there are chunks of information missing I did not think was relevant to the connection to the Borealis, but there is so much about Carl Allen, Morris Jessup, and even the lengths that people have gone to debunk this. There is so much to this. I have linked the Office of Naval Research's statements below, one from 1996 and another from 2017, explaining how the USS Eldridge could never have been involved in something like what was claimed, and that they had never conducted experiments of that nature. I really wanted this video to give a different insight to the Borealis and what it meant. I also really like real-world history, and it gave me a chance to explore something interesting and blend it with a fictional story. If you liked this style, then let me know and I can look at similar things. Now, when putting everything together, I came up with a different theory of what the G-Man and his employers are. We hear in both Episode 2 and Epistle 3 that the crew disappeared with the Borealis, never to be seen again. I think it could be possible that the G-Man and his employers were the crew on that ship who were changed after their experience of being pulled through space and time. They saw everything that had and would ever happen, maybe got some powers from it, time travel, turned into shells of their former human selves. Now, the Shu-Uluthoi theory is still my strongest idea, but I like the idea that they were changed by human technology. I have always wanted to look into when the Borealis incident happened. The dock was built in 1971, and it is likely the experiments began then, at least when they were somehow able to get a Healy-class icebreaker down there. Ratman in his rambles does mention the ship, so that suggests it would have disappeared during his time with Aperture, during the GLaDOS attack in the 2000s. Epistle 3, once again considered not canon, claims the Borealis' bootstrap device was used for the first time when the Combine invaded, so the 2000s. Did it take Aperture 30 years to build this device and not use it once? Personally, I think the Borealis incident happened in the 70s or 80s. That would have given their peers at Black Mesa enough time to hear about the myth of the Borealis. If the ship had jumped during the Combine invasion, that being after Black Mesa had fallen and Aperture was locked down by GLaDOS, how would anyone have heard about the ship? Anyway, that was my rambling, and that was everything I wanted to say. If you enjoyed this video, then I would love for you to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you did not, and let me know what you thought in the comments below. Finally, I would like to thank my gold tier patrons and channel members. Queen Arby, Lewis, Orin X, Drakey Phoenix, Daniel Cal Drawings, 501st Clone Boy, Ruben Mendoza, Imperial Embers, Canifex, Jimsy, Average Soul, Azu, Jonas, Yali Rodriguez, Detroit, Motzi, and Brina Lee. What did you think of this topic? Had you heard about the Philadelphia experiment? And what would you like me to cover next? Let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back soon for a new one.